I awoke in a dense fog, figuratively speaking. I didn't know who I was, where I was, what I was doing, or who was the soft, warm creature that was even now spooning me and snoring. Bit by bit, the details came back to me. Then I recalled the dread of my previous waking period, the dread of walking in darkness, suspecting the darkness contained a monster or an abyss. The dread had less of an edge now. The presence of Juno was comforting, but my curiosity was on fire. I rolled over to face her, careful not to displace the arm draped over me. She had sturdy, plain Midwestern features with something a touch exotic. Her face was a little puffy, and her corn silk hair disheveled, and she looked funny when she snored. She was adorable. She was smart, like an angel. What was an angel doing in my bed? My cynical assessment was that she was using her feminine wiles to influence me, but I didn't care. I'd just be careful to guard against any undue influence. She stirred and opened one bleary eye to gaze at me. "You cad," she said. "You turned down the temperature to make me snuggle you. It's freezing in here." "It is a bit chilly, isn't it? I'll fix that." I got up and went to the thermostat, fancying that she was watching me. After turning up the heat, I resumed my recumbent position. I reached for her hair and, observing no reaction, began running my fingers through it, gently combing out knots. "The fact is, Juno, last night I caught the Tetsu flu. My imagination got me sweating." She froze. "What did you imagine?" "It's stupid, I can't say it. But I will tell you this. I can't sell my government a spaceship without a compelling reason, and I pledge to you that if Tetsu gives me that reason, I'll sell it." Both her eyes were open now. She grabbed my arm. "Andrew, you aren't just telling a girl what she wants to hear, are you?" "I don't know, am I?" "But you mean it?" "Every word." "Splendid. Time to get busy." She hopped out of bed and plucked her dark glasses out of the pile of her discarded clothes. She put them on for 10 seconds and took them off. I got breakfast, and she lay back in bed after fluffing her pillows more upright. "Hope you like bacon and eggs." "And tea?" "Earl Grey." "You people have been watching me. It's not rocket science to find out what tea someone likes. I suppose I should be flattered. Isn't that what they say? Surveillance is the sincerest form of flattery." "Who says that?" She produced an electronic device and began puffing vapor out of it. "Could I try some of that?" "Help yourself." I took the device and drew deep. In addition to the familiar effects of nicotine, there was a peculiar flush and tingling. Shocked, I said, "Is there marijuana in here?" "Don't tell the army," she winked. "You know that stuff rots your brain, right?" "Maybe chronic use does, but I find it an efficacious treatment for hangovers." "You can get dope on Asgard? Where?" "I don't know about most people, but I get my dope from Julian Frost." She grinned. "The chief of intelligence for the Tetsu Corporation is a drug dealer." She laughed and said, "I told you this room wasn't monitored." She got closer, close enough I could hear every breath distinctly. "We know some of your secrets. Now you are learning some of our secrets," she purred. "This means you are becoming one of us. Are you comfortable with that?" "Yes." I ran my fingers through her hair again and said, "I'm not sure I trust you lot yet, but I'm starting to believe that's a moot factor." "I think you'll soon learn how true that is." The door slid open, and an autonomous cart rolled in with breakfast. There were 2 platters of bacon and eggs, tea for me, and coffee for Juno. We took our breakfast off the cart, and Juno also took a rectangular canvas satchel off the cart as well. We ate in silence. Juno finished first and was in the lavatory for 20 minutes. Then she emerged wrapped in a towel, shiny clean, with her mop of yellow hair brushed back as neatly as possible into a ponytail. I was still working on breakfast, watching. She opened the canvas bag and took out a complete outfit. She slipped on some silk panties under her towel and turned her back to me to take off the towel and put on a bra. Then she turned around and put on a white blouse and olive green slacks. I hope I'm not distracting you from finishing breakfast. Sorry, I'm a slow eater. She put on an olive green jacket 1 size too big, which concealed some of her curves. I blurted out, Juno, do you like me? No, I always prance around in my underwear with men I don't give a shit about. She looked at my face, said, "Aw," and walked over to kiss me on the forehead. She went back to her satchel and pulled out a box of what looked like jewelry before I realized it was the accoutrements of a major general. As she affixed gold stars to the epaulets of her jacket, she said, I like you more than you know, but you can't like me yet until you know what I know. I can't say what it will do to your perspective. Then she decorated her chest in medals. I didn't recognize most of the medals, except a Purple Heart. I pointed at it and said, You were wounded in combat? She shrugged. I was visiting a forward operating base that came under small arms fire, and a bullet sent a rock chip flying into my butt, left a little scar. I didn't think it merited a medal, but the brass insisted I get it. She tucked a carmine handkerchief into her breast pocket and put on some smart black shoes with good arch support. Then she put her fists on her hips and said, Well? Well what? You're lying there in your skivvies and I'm ready to go. Annoyed, I said, Sorry, no one told me I was going anywhere. Now you know. Chop chop, Andrew. I need you to come with me. Please get dressed. I guessed it was important, but I wondered why she hadn't told me sooner. Being rushed is not my forte. In 15 minutes, I was showered and dressed in a blue turtleneck, tan slacks, and brown loafers without socks. I followed Juno through Asgard into a section that wasn't in my pamphlet. It felt like we were walking uphill for a while, and I felt the artificial gravity decrease markedly. Clearly, we were getting closer to the center of the satellite. Turning a corner, we came to a door, and in front of the door stood General Collini, Julian Frost, Dr. Tetsu, Cynthia, and several other people I didn't recognize. Tetsu said, So glad you could join us, Andrew. I smiled and nodded, glancing at Frost. Were those dark circles under his eyes the mark of a workaholic or an insomniac and drug addict? Both? He caught my glance and smiled. I said, Glad to be here too, Shishiro. May I call you Shishiro? He nodded. I feel like you're going to show me something, so let's get on with it. Yes, thank you, said Tetsu. I am also in a rush. As usual. He gestured, and his minions opened the door to reveal a room with racks of black rubbery-looking garments and peculiar helmets with full-face visors. The core of Asgard contains a near-perfect vacuum, so we have to wear these suits to see it. They are very user-friendly and require no training to operate. Just don't get them snagged on any sharp objects. Repressing a shudder, I let Collini assist me in putting on a suit. Everyone else seemed proficient in this exercise. When we were prepared, we climbed a ladder into an airlock. When everyone was inside, I heard and felt the air get sucked out. And we climbed another ladder into a cavern almost 1 kilometer in diameter. In the middle was the central axis of Asgard 1, straight above us. 400 meters long and 20 meters thick. All over, thousands of machines hung like stalactites and stalagmites, whose purpose I could not imagine, except to suppose they constituted the factory I had heard about. Cords and tubes festooned the cavern like cobwebs. An object detached from the central pillar, at Tetsu's command, I presumed, and drifted towards us. It trailed a cable. In moments, the blocky object floated into a slot where it snapped in and the cable drew taut. Then devices were handed out. One end of the device I saw clamped onto the cable, and the other end had a handle we hung on to. Cynthia went first, demonstrating how it operated. When she clamped on, it pulled her along the cable toward the pillar. Tetsu went next, followed by Frost, and then the people I didn't know. Kalini put his visor on mine and said, "Follow me, okay?" Then he went up. I just stood there, and Juno pulled me around. She said, "I'll be right behind you. Go." I looked up. The others seemed to be traveling safely. Cynthia had already arrived at the pillar and gone inside. Swallowing my apprehension, I clamped onto the cable and held on tight, but not too tight. I knew if I held on as hard as I could, I'd lose circulation in my hands. Then I wouldn't be able to hold on at all. Lifted off my feet, I looked down, reassured to see that Juno was, in fact, right behind me. At this faint level of gravity, I thought, even if I fell, it wouldn't hurt much. I'd just bounce around like a puffball. Then I thought again. In a vacuum, there is no air resistance, so even a small acceleration could be deadly over enough distance. Then I made up my mind that falling was not an option, so I wouldn't worry about it. I found myself getting angry at Tetsu as I was halfway to the center. Why did he have to make this transit so dangerous? Riding up to his little clubhouse, suspended over an abyss in a vacuum, depending on a little cable for survival, seemed like an avoidable risk. That understated how I felt about it. Was this evidence of Tetsu's mental imbalance? But what if he wasn't crazy? Why would he do such a thing? The simplest explanation was that he wanted to make where we were going difficult to get to. This implied it was important, which I already suspected, and I'd soon be able to confirm it, if this was correct, for I'd arrived. I rode the cable through an opening in the pillar. The speed of the device slowed, and strong arms plucked me off the cable and set me down in a little chamber we were all crowded into. As soon as I was set down, a slight movement of my legs caused me to float right back up again. For a moment I had the dreadful thought that I would sink back through the hole in the floor like an errant soap bubble and get splattered on the far wall of the cavern. Then Juno came in, grabbed my suit, and swung me over to the wall where I grabbed onto a handle. Secure, I took in my surroundings. Tetsu had drifted up to the top of the room where he opened a hatch and scrambled through it alone. Juno slapped me on the rump, and I turned around. She pointed up, then pushed me in that general direction, and I went through the hatch as well. I emerged in a cylindrical chamber, the heart of Asgard, as it turned out. Once I was in, the hatch closed shut, to my dismay. How long, I wondered, would this suit continue to supply me with air? Then I was shocked to see Tetsu remove his helmet. Since he did not explode, I didn't panic when he reached over and removed my helmet. With a gasp, I verified that there was, in fact, a breathable atmosphere where we were. Tetsu gazed at me with a huge grin, then pointed with his arm at the only distinguishing feature of the room. Look! Of course I noticed it. It was a jet black sphere about 1 meter in diameter, which hung in the exact center of mass of the space station. Like an inky octopus, several thick black conduits led from the sphere to the outer walls of the chamber. Tetsu's eyes were shining. "Well," he said, "I have no idea what this is." Tetsu puffed out his chest and spread his arms in an all-encompassing gesture. "This is my second most significant invention, the phase transduction generator." "Shichiro, my friend, I have no clue what that means." "Wait, what's your most significant invention?" He affected not to hear the question, saying, "It is not important now to understand what it is or how it works, but rather what it does. This machine," he jabbed at it with his arm, "can produce so much energy, enough to supply all the power for Asgard 100 times over. So why muck about with all those solar panels? Why not use this?" His eyes darted to the side. "I am loath to issue easily capturable energy in any circumstance. Waste not, want not. With my construction methods, it's as easy to construct a photovoltaic surface as it is a surface that just sits there." "And what's the other reason you're not using this generator? Doesn't it work right?" Then I noticed that his near constant perspiration in this environment of negligible gravity had built up a uniform layer on his face that calved like an iceberg and slid off, becoming more sphere-like as it drifted away. With a weak smile, he said, "I'll tell you soon, just not here or now, you see. I haven't slept much in the past few days. I was anxious you see this so you know it's there. I needed you to see it now. I have to, crash. Such are the limits of mortal man. No, let's get your suit back together. We're going back to the outer ring." I could see his hands trembling as he refastened my helmet. This was terrifying. Here I was in a little room with a bit of air, and I was relying on a madman to ensure my survival. But I reasoned there wasn't anything I could do about it. Either he did it right or he didn't. 50-50. It worked, of course, otherwise I couldn't tell you it did, Shelby. By the time we got back to what I thought of as the habitable zone, I was rattled. Was this part of some brainwashing process to scare me half to death so I'd be more susceptible to suggestion? If so, I had to admit it was working. As the mystery and fear deepened, so too did my curiosity, and I was eager to hear more. We retraced our way to the outer ring, and once our environmental suits were off, Juno took my hand and said, "Let's get some sleep. We're both short on it. Tetsu is sleeping now too, but he may be up again in several hours, and he'll want to talk then." I scowled. "What if I'm still asleep? I don't like being on call." "Shh. The more rest you get, the better." That sounded ominous to me, but I accepted her assurance, nodding in agreement. Truly, I was exhausted. Being terror-bound my whole life and then getting tossed into space, my circadian rhythms were out of whack. And all the time I had been here, how long, I forgot. I had been in a state of constant overstimulation. Between the extremes of my experience, I was ragged. When I crawled into bed and pulled the sheet over me, every cell in my body vibrated with relief, except my brain cells. They were still tense, if fuzzy. But when Juno slipped under the sheet and snuggled me, my brain felt better too. "You induce oxytocin," I muttered. "Huh? That means I feel good about you. That's nice." A service cart rolled into the room, carrying a bucket. The bucket had ice and a glass jar of opaque red liquid. "What's this?" I said. "My special Bloody Mary recipe." She shook up the jar and poured the contents into 2 ice-filled glasses, which she garnished with lime and lemon wedges, and toothpicks with 4 olives. With my first sip, I detected copious amounts of fresh shredded horseradish and Tabasco sauce, just the way I liked it. "This is the best Bloody Mary I've ever had. Can I like you yet? Juno gulped her beverage and said, Not yet. For now, finish Mama's medicine and get some rest. Juno, what is Tetsu going to tell me tomorrow? I can't say. No, you won't say. There's a difference. She glared. I know what I said and I mean it. I can't tell you because I don't understand. Only Tetsu does. Explain what? You know something. Tell me. But instead of telling me, she jumped on top of me and stopped my mouth with kisses. Then she ripped off our undergarments. She was like a ravenous beast, and we did things I'd never done before. Granted, I'd only been with 2 women previously, but I suspected that she was unusually amorous and adventurous. Or was this common in America? She utterly exhausted me, but before I passed out, I was wanting more of her curious ways. When I awoke, I was disoriented. Juno and I were naked, lying under a rumpled sheet. Then I remembered. With great care, I broke free of her embrace so as not to wake her. I showered and donned an unbleached linen suit with matching boat shoes. Ready to go, I cracked open a bottle of Hexagon and sat down in one of my chairs, watching Juno. I wondered then if I was falling in love. What was love? As I sat there 1,000 kilometers above Terra, watching this amazing woman I had the good fortune to be associated with, I recalled my other loves. Brenda owned the only bar in my home village. She was my first in my heart. Lady Nassau was an aristocrat, well-connected. Did I choose them, or did they choose me? And now I was trying to figure out what was happening with Juno. True, I was smitten the moment I saw her. But I didn't seek her out, she came to me. Her affection seemed genuine, but I suspected an ulterior motive to snare me in her intrigues. And I decided I didn't care. If this is what happened, being drawn deeper into Tetsu's plan, it was fine. I heard the voice of another ghost. A man never rises so high as when he knows not whither he is going. Juno awoke and flailed about in a stupor, looking for me, I presumed. Then she saw me sitting, dressed and groomed. I winked and said, I stole a march on you. She groaned and rolled out of bed in all her glory, saying, fair enough, and went into the lavatory. 10 minutes later, she came out and went back to bed. I said, aren't you going to get ready to go? No, you have to meet Tetsu, not me. Go on. I'll be here when you get back. Then she burrowed her face into the pillows as if getting ready to hibernate. Okay, where am I supposed to meet him? His living room, where you first saw him. Here, I could go in. I strolled out into the corridors of Asgard and decided to navigate on foot by instinct. I knew the general direction to go in. As I trudged down one hallway after another, I attempted to calculate how long it would take me. Being 2 kilometers in diameter, Asgard had an outer circumference a bit over 6. Tetsu's quarters, I knew, were a quarter of the way around the satellite, so it would be almost exactly a mile, which at my speed would take me about 15 minutes if I were walking in a straight line. But with a few twists and turns and a little backtracking, it took me 25 minutes. When I arrived at Tetsu's, his swordsman stepped aside and waved me through. For the second time, I entered Tetsu's inner sanctum. He was in his usual seat by the window, stargazing. The door slid shut behind me, and Tetsu was still and silent. Common behavior for him. I took a seat in the chair next to him and noticed a little table had been set up between the chairs. It contained a platter of marinated and grilled meats, crackers, cheese, sushi rolls, etc. In addition, there were 2 bottles of scotch, 2 glasses, and next to the table, a huge bucket of ice. Not sure if he knew I was there. I said, My own bottle of scotch for breakfast. Really? He whipped his glasses off, folded them, and put them in his pocket. He meant business. You don't have to drink if you don't want to. He scarfed down a salmon roll and made himself a glass of scotch. Not wanting to be rude, I snacked a bit and made my own glass. Nibbling and sipping, we sat in silence. I was waiting for Tetsu to speak first. I could enjoy watching the stars drift by his window indefinitely. Finally, he said, "That generator I showed you, it produces signals that travel faster than light." "That's impossible, isn't it?" He sighed. "No, I just told you, they go faster than light. I'm no expert at science like you, but I thought nothing should go faster than light." Tetsu rubbed at his temples, and seeing his hands come away wet with perspiration, grabbed a towel to dab at his face. "If you put a photon on a racetrack and have any other particle race it, the photon wins. But if the other particle takes a shortcut, it can beat the photon." "Shortcut?" He sipped some more scotch and said, "Would you accept, for the sake of argument, that my assertion is correct?" "Sure, I guess. Naturally, you have some evidence of this." "I do. When I first tested the phase transduction generator, my sensors in the asteroid belt..." "You have sensors in the asteroid belt?" "Yes, and when I first tested the generator, my drones detected it. It seemed instantaneous and certainly faster than light speed." "So, what's the shortcut?" "Andrew, the universe is not what it may seem to you and to most casual observers. No doubt you are familiar with Plato's parable of the cave, in which people are deceived by their minds into thinking that shadows are reality." "Well, whatever. So the generator produces signals faster than light. Okay. What is the consequence of that?" Tetsu turned in his chair to look at me. "I don't know what the range is of the signals, but it's highly likely that they travel for light years, and instantaneously or near so." I let a few seconds pass. "So?" "That means someone else could have seen the signals." I felt a chill. "What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean, someone else?" I noticed my glass was empty and fixed that situation. "An alien civilization, Andrew." I laughed. "But that's tripe, isn't it? I mean, it's just speculation, right?" Tetsu sipped in silence. "I mean, we can speculate about aliens, but there's no evidence they exist, right?" Tetsu looked at me sideways. The chill I had felt had become a howling tundra of apprehension. "Okay, Jesus, you believe you have evidence of an alien civilization? Hit me, what is it?" Tetsu kept sipping in silence for a few moments, and right before I started shouting, he spoke. "It was a surprise to me when I got the sensor readings from my drones in the belt. I repeated the conditions several more times to verify it." He took a big sip. "When I discovered I had the ability to detect faster than light signals, I immediately widened my search to see if I could find any other such signatures. I did." After a pause, I said, "I'm not really a scientist, not a professional anyway. I'm not sure I'm qualified to evaluate your claims." "Damn it, I'm telling you, I saw it. A faster-than-light signal that originated outside this solar system." I was struggling to disbelieve him, but I couldn't. I trusted him, and I almost never wrong about trusting people. "Is it possible, Shichiro, that what you saw was a natural phenomenon, like a funny hiccup from a star?" "Not to my understanding. The signals I picked up were of a specific nature which I can only explain as being produced by technology that was at least as sophisticated as what I was using." "What does that tell you?" He clearly wanted a response from me. So I downshifted my brain and stepped on the gas. What I came up with was, if we can see them, they can see us. Yes! Tetsu shot to his feet and began pacing in front of the window. Then he stopped and turned to me, the cosmos rotating behind him. So, if they can see us, maybe they do see us. I spread my hands and shook my head in bewilderment. Tetsu slammed back into his chair and asked in a condescending tone, "So if they can, that is, if they do see us, what does that mean?" Annoyed, I said, "You seem to have it figured out. Why don't you just tell me?" He relaxed a little and said, "Are you familiar with Stephen Hawking's ideas about extrasolar intelligence?" "No." His basic idea was that an extrasolar civilization would most likely regard us with extreme hostility. Why? Well, not so much that, but that we would regard them with hostility. I was confused. Wait, what? Tetsu clapped his hands together. Take the metaphor of when the navigators of the Renaissance discovered America. They may not have had hostile intent towards the current inhabitants. Pizarro did. He waved my comment away. But the net result was that the civilization with ships that could cross the ocean essentially wiped out the civilization that didn't. I thought for a moment and said, "We have no idea whether they're hostile, friendly, or neutral, so we should be prepared for the worst." That's it in a nutshell. Tetsu polished off his scotch, put a few more ice cubes on top, and filled up again. "So this is why you're eager to sell armed spaceships to the great powers?" "Yes. Consider this, Andrew. I discovered phase transduction a year ago. This enabled me to identify another place in the galaxy where this level of technology exists. And the odds are that the aliens didn't just barely discover this technology like I did. That's a negligible probability. In other words, it's a near certainty they've had the technology for a long time." I finished and refilled my scotch. That Tetsu thinks of everything, I thought. He knew how much scotch it would take for me to listen to this. The funny thing was, Shelby, I felt stone sober, like the dread was neutralizing the alcohol. He continued, "I believe the branch of applied science unlocked by phase transduction will, in time, permit travel faster than light. It might take me 5 years, or 50 years. Chances are Civilization X already has it. In other words, let's say you're us, and you can cross between stars in a reasonable amount of time. Then you locate an alien civilization. Would you want to investigate it?" I gulped. Yes, maybe not me personally, but I would certainly want someone to look into it. "No," he said. "We don't know if they were anything like us, but we can't discount the possibility they would react like we would. In fact, they may already be on the way." Fear closed around me. Good Lord, I thought, is this what Tetsu is afflicted with? Permanent terror. How awful. I was tempted to start drinking scotch right out of the bottle, but I didn't, because Dad always said if you drink from the bottle, you have a problem. Since I didn't have a problem, I just refilled my glass like a gentleman. I yelled, "Well, for fuck's sake, why isn't the battle fleet ready by now if you think we're looking at first contact with aliens of unknowable intentions?" Tetsu gave me a tired look. "Don't you think I've thought about it? Anyway, I've only known about this for a year." "Yes, of course you have." Then I thought about it. "I don't understand. If you have credible evidence we could be facing possible extinction, why not share this information? Isn't time of the essence?" "What do you think would happen if I did that?" That dirty son of a bitch, I thought, tricking me into drawing my own conclusions even though I'm drunk. Drunk early in the morning by my reckoning. Then I recalled Winston Churchill drank a fifth of whiskey every day. Then I recalled he did this under the exigency of extinction. So the situations were similar. I think, Shichiro, that if you spilled the beans, as it were, there are two likely possibilities. One, you're ignored as a madman. Two, you would be believed, and chaos would ensue. The great powers would run around trying to do things, and the friction of political forces would make a mess. Chaos indeed. As you say, the response would be multiple, disjointed, and in some cases, contradictory. I want the fleet to be built and integrated before they know anything. The entire infrastructure of our response for planetary defense has to be done in secret. A dozen questions jammed in my mind at once. The first words I got out were, maybe revealing Civilization X would cause chaos, but isn't it up to the people of Terra to decide for themselves, through their duly and unduly appointed representatives, how best to defend themselves? Who are you to withhold this information? He tapped himself on the chest. I'm the one who discovered the information. That means I'm morally responsible for the consequences of revealing or not revealing said information. It is my opinion that remaining silent is the best course at present. Okay, I'll grant that for the sake of argument. You want the nations of Terra to sponsor the construction of a space fleet, but you don't want them to know why they are doing it? How exactly do you plan to motivate them? That is a good question. He was silent for 10 seconds. Then he looked up and asked, What would you do? I snorted. Maybe they'd take the ships if they were free. Tetsu brightened. That just might work. What? I was joking. I don't know what a kilometer-long dreadnought costs, but it can't be cheap. You want to give them away. We've established time is of the essence, yes? This may be the quickest and best way to get the fleet together. And the cost isn't much, relatively speaking. I could get most of the construction materials from a few good asteroids, and I've mentioned before how much more efficient it is to build in space, especially for large objects. So you're just going to go to the various governments and say, here's a free spaceship. Don't you think that would arouse suspicion? They'd be too distracted trying to figure out your angle to do anything useful. Another good point, Andrew. We need a pretext to give away free dreadnoughts, one which will not raise questions. Any ideas? I became still, willing my mind to empty. Forgetting terror, forgetting Scotch, forgetting everything. As near as possible, I adopted the attitude of a plant, a being devoid of consciousness. This was an illusion, of course. I couldn't turn my brain off any more than I could will my heart to stop beating. What I was trying to do was silence my internal dialogue, which was bedlam at the moment, and see if any ideas floated up from the larger part of my brain, which moved in the dark, iceberg-like, below the choppy surface of my conscious mind. And my inner oracle spoke. Asteroid protection. Tetsu looked confused, and I must admit that gave me a little satisfaction. What do you mean, asteroid protection? It's like this. We know, everyone knows, that vast fortunes await those who exploit the mineral resources of the solar system. That's easy, common knowledge. Tetsu nodded. Naturally, those who go into space for mining will bring with them the demand for food, habitation, recreation, and all the comforts of civilization. In other words, a boom in off-planet population is right around the corner. And this goes with an economic boom as well. There's 8 billion people on Terra now. By the end of the century, there could be another 8 billion living off Terra. You're rambling. What's asteroid protection, and how does it relate to getting our fleet built? Just tell me, do you agree with my assessment of the growth potential of off-planet development? Tetsu was dumbfounded. He spread his arms and turned from side to side. Look who you're talking to. I'll take that as a yes. Now here's the pretext. There is a small but not negligible chance that any human settlement in space may be in danger from a collision with a comet, asteroid, or any bit of stray matter careening around the solar system. The more settlement there is, the greater the risk of a collision. So the fleet has to be built to protect development from hazardous debris. Tetsu sat in thought for what seemed like minutes, not moving except to occasionally sip scotch. Then he spoke. It's settled then. With your invaluable input, I have devised a plan. You do want to help save humanity, right? Look who you're talking to. Right. I'm not going to employ you as a lobbyist. I foresee you playing a larger role. And what's that? You'll go back home, reveal nothing you learned here, nothing important. People will probably ask you about it. Deflect, hide, and as soon as possible, form a corporation. A corporation? Why? Your corporation will receive a contract to use Tetsu technology to effect large building projects on Terra. What? What does this have to do with saving humanity? I don't know anything about building projects. You'll learn. I need a builder I can trust. To build what? A canal. A canal. Do I look like Theodore fucking Roosevelt? What canal? Tetsu shrugged. One canal is as good as another. It's the experience in building that's important. Experience for what? Building something else? And what's that? How much time do we have anyway? I don't know. I'm constantly searching for approaching objects. If I do see one, then I'll have a better idea about time, but we should prepare as fast as possible. And how does me building a canal help prepare? I'm sorry, Andrew, I can't explain everything right now. I have so much work to do, so many details to attend to personally. He took his glasses out and went to put them on, then stopped. My friend, I don't mean to be rude, but I must, go into my glasses and get to work. I'm sorry. I stood up. Nothing to apologize for. I understand completely. You're the brains of the outfit, but you need to bury yourself in hand work. I'll see myself out. Tetsu looked sad. Thank you. Though I do so enjoy socializing with you. I have the possible salvation of our species to consider. Don't we all? I walked away. From the corner of my eye, I saw him put on his glasses and slump into his chair. As I left his chamber, I thought, the poor son of a bitch. What a heavy burden he's carrying. Then I recalled I now shared his burden. One of Tetsu's swordsmen said, My Lord Trampier, I observed you came here on foot. Would you like an escort to assist you with teacup travel back to your rooms? I'm not Lord Trampier, I barked. That is my father, sir. Beg your pardon, my lord. Not a lord, damn it. Sorry, Mr. Gray, would you like assistance? Yes, I'd appreciate that very much. I hope you will forgive my poor manners. I'm just a little tired. Quite understandable, my, Mr. Gray. And he got me back to my rooms. As promised, Juno was still there when I returned. She was laying on her back, wearing her glasses. I couldn't tell if she was asleep or reading. So I shed my suit and got into bed. Without moving her head, she groped around until she felt my mustache, then sighed. I faced her and put a hand on her belly. It was muscular, but not flat or lumpy. A layer of fat smoothed out the sharp corners of her abdomen and described a gentle slope like the lengthwise curve of an eggshell which arched from just under her breasts to just past her waist. I said, "What are you reading?" "Current events." "What's new?" "I'm reading about the latest incident in the Arctic Ocean. A Russian submarine nearly bumped into Denmark's Sea Lab. The Russians are saying it was an accident due to equipment failure, and the Danes are making a big stink about it, saying underwater boundaries must be enforced." "What will come of this?" "Probably just a smidge of diplomatic pressure." I shook my head. I thought the Bering Tunnel was supposed to breed more interneighborly comedy. "The Russian Far East and Alaska are getting on well, but Moscow looks west and north. The European peninsula ever fills them with dread and greed, as does the Arctic Ocean now." "Why can't we all just get along?" I asked, and Juno slapped me on the arm. She took off her glasses and fixed her dark eyes on me. "Well, did he tell you?" "Tell me what?" She smoldered at me and said nothing. "Do you mean the likelihood of first contact and the possibility of annihilation?" She squeaked. "What do you think?" "I think it's bloody awful." Awful and exciting in a horrible way. "You believe him?" "Damn it, I do. I'd rather not, but I can't help it. My instincts tell me he is trustworthy and almost never wrong." I touched her cheek, thinking, I trust you too. "Also, there's no doubt that Tetsu knows science and technology. Look where we are. If he says he's seen the tracks of aliens, my assumption is he knows what he's talking about." She put a hand in my hair and whispered, "I'm so sorry." Tears welled up in her eyes. "And I'm so glad, too," she sobbed. "I'm so glad you're with us." I embraced her, and she cried into my shoulder. "Tetsu sweats," I thought, "and Juno weeps." After a while, I whispered, "Does this mean I can like you now?" In a flash, she slipped out of my arms and pushed me down on the bed, then struck me with a kiss. "Yes, kiss. Yes, Andrew, kiss. We're friends forever now. Kiss, kiss, kiss. All the way to the end." Friends forever? The end? I had some unsettling questions about all that, but her kisses and, well, my brain went fuzzy, and I forgot about aliens, losing count of our climaxes. For my remaining time on Asgard, we barely left my room. It was like there was no tomorrow. We were among the few who knew how true that might be. The time came for me to return to Terra. I was glad to go home, but I was getting used to Asgard, and I'd miss it. But I had to go. Business on the ground. General Collini was running a 20-person shuttle down to Falmouth, and that was my ride. Saying goodbye to Juno was difficult. I hugged her and said, "When will I see you again?" "I don't know. Both of us are going to be busy, working on different things, and the work has to be done. You know that. But I'd certainly like to see you after, if not sooner." After what?" "You know after what. First contact, silly. What we're getting ready for." And she kissed me like I'd never been kissed before or would be again. A proper goodbye kiss, if ever there was one. Leaving Asgard was not as fun or as fast as entering it. Like schleps, we rode these pedal bikes on a chain up a long slope to the dock. To be sure, the pedaling got easier the closer to the hub we got, but it was still tedious. Collini was right ahead of me, and I griped, "Is this the best Tetsu can offer his patrons?" "Ha ha, no, Mr. Gray. Paying customers ride the power lift. Tetsu himself rides these bikes out, too, I assure you." We got to the shuttle, and he said, "You'll ride up front with me." I groped my way into the cockpit like a 0G pro and fastened my seatbelts. I said, wouldn't it be better to have someone experienced in the co-pilot seat in case you have a stroke or something? Ha ha, I am the co-pilot. Kalini said, the flight is more or less automated. You have great confidence in Tetsu's software and hardware. I do. On this shuttle, the cockpit is the first-class section. With a wiggle of his eyebrows, he produced a pair of cigars. Don't light up until we start moving. The shuttle lurched away from Asgard, drifted for about 30 seconds. Then the engines kicked on and we accelerated. The G-force settled us into our seats. We bit the ends off our cigars and lit up. After the cabin had been fully polluted, I said, I've been reading up on you, General Kalini. Please, call me Lou. Lou? Yes. Loazi equals Lou, get it? Got it. As I was saying, I discovered you're the most famous field commander of your generation and an able military administrator. He frowned. I do not like being famous for human butchery. Have you ever seen someone die? A grown man dying in agony, screaming for his mama? I shuddered. No, God no, I can't imagine. Sounds terrible. It is. Civilians sometimes talk about the glory of war, but there isn't any. Men do terrible things, and the only grace is to think that things would be even worse if the terrible things weren't done. Some people call me a hero. I'm no hero. I stepped over the corpses of heroes on my way to destroying an enemy that was a little worse than I am. He snorted. Victories. Believe me, nothing except a battle lost can be half so melancholy as a battle won, I finished. Oh, you heard that one? Any more favorite quotes? I am an optimist. I see no use in being anything else. I like that one too. He got silent. After a while I said, so what is your role in Tetsu's scheme exactly? I am responsible for the physical security of Dr. Tetsu's various enterprises. So that hoplite I met on the runway at Falmouth, he is in your department? And Julian Frost, isn't he also in charge of security? Not like me. He is what you would call Tetsu's head of secret police. He runs a network of spies inside and outside of the organization. I deal with known threats. He deals with unknown threats. My task is easier, I think. I can delegate and go to sleep. Mr. Frost looks like he never sleeps. I agree, he looks very tired. And why not? When you have to consider unknown threats, when can you sleep? Try to sleep, and you just keep imagining possible threats, each more fantastic than the last. All I do is imagine men with guns and bombs, very simple. Tell me about these other threats. Espionage, mostly, and general purity. That is, Dr. Tetsu is very particular about moral risk, and Mr. Frost has proven himself over the years to be brilliant at sniffing it out. Frost, he looks like he might be on drugs. Do you think so? Why do you ask? Are you looking for drugs? No, sir. I just thought, how would it be if the person in charge of moral risk prevention was himself a moral risk? American President Roosevelt said, to catch a thief, hire a thief. And the President Roosevelt before him said, a man who will steal for me will steal from me. Kalini gave me a shrewd look. If Mr. Frost is a purely venal actor and he's intelligent, he will realize that his present position is the surest path to riches. In any case, I have confidence in him. Well, that's good enough for me. We rode in silence for some time, smoking slowly. Then our trajectory pointed down at Terra. We were coming in on the dark side. First the absolute darkness of the Pacific Ocean, then some smudges of light which described North America. Knowing our trip would soon come to an end, I said, "What do you know about Tetsu's canals? What's he working on?" Collini looked skeptical, then furtive. "You did not hear this from me. You never heard it, period, okay?" "Okay. The Isthmus of Kra." "The what of what?" "It's the lower extremity of Thailand, south of which is Malaysia, Singapore, and the Straits of Malacca. Those straits are the most heavily traveled bit of ocean on Terra, and they're full of pirates." "Pirates?" "Yes, a weak state, poverty, and a vast amount of commerce flowing through it, and you have piracy. Very simple." "So a canal through Thailand, why?" "Also very simple. It shaves 3 or 4 days of travel for every ship passing from the Indian to Pacific Ocean, or vice versa. It provides a great boost to the Thai economy. It lowers maritime insurance." He puffed on his cigar. "And the isthmus is about 45 kilometers wide at the narrowest point." "Fuck's sake, that's about a third of the distance of the Panama Canal, isn't it? If it's such a great idea, why hasn't anyone built it yet?" Collini said, "The Panama and Nicaragua canals each shave a month of time off each trip, much more than 3 or 4 days, so your benefit per kilometer of construction is considerably higher there. And in addition to economic considerations, the British," he glared at me just for a fraction of a second, "were opposed to this canal for a long time for obvious reasons. But Tetsu believes he has solved the economic angle. It can be built with his methods quite profitably." He winked.